The train station was louder than ever that afternoon, but somehow, in the middle of hundreds of hurried strangers, one quiet voice reached me more clearly than every announcement echoing through the speakers. I had spent years believing that the biggest moments in life came with warning signs, dramatic music, or impossible choices. I was wrong. Sometimes, the moment that changes everything begins with a simple question from someone everyone else refuses to see. A young girl standing on a single prosthetic leg looked at me with nervous eyes, clutching an old backpack that had been stitched together countless times. She smiled with the kind of courage only people who have suffered truly understand. Then she softly asked, "Can I sit with you?" I had no idea that saying yes would completely rewrite the story of my life. Before we continue, if you believe kindness still has the power to change lives, please take a second to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Single Dad's Story. Every subscription helps us bring more emotional stories that remind the world compassion still exists. My name is Rowan Mercer, and until that afternoon, I thought I understood loneliness. I was 38 years old, worked long shifts repairing elevators across the city, and spent most evenings in a tiny apartment that echoed with silence. 3 years earlier, I had lost both my wife and unborn son in a terrible highway accident caused by a distracted driver. Since then, every day felt identical. Wake up before sunrise, bury myself in work, return home exhausted, microwave another frozen dinner, stare at old photographs until sleep finally won the battle against memory. People believe time healed everything. They were wrong. Time simply teaches you how to hide your pain well enough that strangers stop asking questions. That Friday had already been difficult. My company announced layoffs, and although I kept my position, several close coworkers did not. Guilt mixed with relief, leaving a bitter taste that no amount of coffee could wash away. The train platform overflowed with commuters anxious to get home before evening traffic. Every bench was packed except the one beside me. At first, I assumed people simply preferred standing. Then I noticed why. A teenage girl wearing a faded yellow hoodie slowly approached the seating area. She balanced herself carefully using a metal prosthetic leg. Every step required effort, yet she refused to show frustration. Instead, she carried herself with quiet dignity. People glanced at her before quickly looking away. Some even shifted farther down the bench to avoid sitting beside her. She reached me after several slow steps and asked if she could sit. Without thinking, I smiled and nodded. Her shoulders relaxed instantly, as though someone had just lifted an invisible weight she had been carrying all day. For several minutes we simply sat together while trains arrived and departed. She looked exhausted, but peaceful. I noticed small details that revealed far more than words ever could. The backpack was patched in several places. Her sneakers were worn nearly flat. The sleeve of her hoodie had been carefully sewn by hand. Yet despite everything, she held herself with remarkable grace. Eventually she thanked me. She explained that many people refused to let her sit beside them because they assumed she would somehow inconvenience them. Others stared at her prosthetic leg with uncomfortable curiosity. Some pretended not to hear her at all. She had grown used to rejection. Those words stayed with me long after the train arrived. We boarded together, and since the train was crowded, we remained side by side. Outside the windows, afternoon sunlight painted the city in warm shades of gold. Children played in neighborhood parks while workers hurried toward home. It looked like an ordinary day. It wasn't. Little by little, the girl began sharing pieces of her story. Her name was Mireya. 2 years earlier, a school bus accident had taken her left leg below the knee. Her father had passed away when she was young, and her mother struggled with a serious heart condition that made working impossible. Medical bills consumed nearly everything they owned. Mireya attended school in the mornings and worked afternoons at a small bookstore to help pay rent. She spoke without bitterness. That surprised me most. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She simply accepted life as it was. When my stop approached, I wished her good luck and prepared to leave. Then something unexpected happened. She reached into her backpack and handed me a folded paper flower. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't professionally made. But every fold had been carefully crafted. She smiled and explained that whenever someone treated her kindly, she made them a flower because kindness deserved to be remembered. I carried that paper flower home. It sat on my kitchen table all weekend. Every time I looked at it, I wondered how someone who had lost so much could still find reasons to thank strangers. Meanwhile, I had spent years drowning in grief despite having far more than she did. The following Monday, I deliberately caught the same train. Part of me hoped our meeting hadn't been coincidence. When I spotted Mireia reading quietly near the same platform, something inside me felt strangely lighter. From then on, our paths crossed almost every weekday. Sometimes we spoke about books. Sometimes about movies. Sometimes about absolutely nothing. She had an incredible gift for noticing beauty where others found inconvenience. She admired sunsets reflected in office windows, tiny flowers growing through cracked sidewalks, elderly couples holding hands, and children laughing over spilled ice cream. She reminded me that happiness often hides inside ordinary moments. Weeks passed. Without realizing it, I started smiling again. My co-workers noticed first. They joked that I finally looked awake. The truth was much deeper. For the first time since losing my family, I wasn't surviving each day. I was living it. One rainy evening, however, Mireia didn't appear. Nor the next day. Or the day after. Concern slowly replaced optimism. Finally, I visited the bookstore where she worked. The owner recognized my description immediately. His smile disappeared. He quietly explained that Mireia's mother had collapsed and been admitted to the hospital. Mireia had stopped coming to work so she could remain beside her. Something inside me refused to walk away. I found the hospital room after asking several nurses. Through the doorway I saw Mireia sitting beside her mother's bed, pretending to read while secretly wiping away tears. She looked smaller than I remembered. More fragile. When she noticed me, surprise covered her face. No one else had visited. Not relatives. Not neighbors. No one. I stayed only a few minutes. I brought sandwiches, fresh fruit, and several books from the bookstore owner. Nothing extraordinary. Just enough to remind her she wasn't alone. Over the following weeks, I visited regularly after work. Hospital staff began recognizing me. So did Mireia's mother, Helena. Despite her illness, Helena possessed remarkable warmth. She constantly apologized for accepting help. Eventually I explained something she never expected. Years earlier, after my own loss, dozens of strangers had quietly supported me. A neighbor mowed my lawn without asking. A waitress secretly paid for my dinner. Someone left groceries outside my apartment door every Sunday for months. I never discovered who they were. Their kindness kept me alive. Helping Mireia wasn't charity. It was gratitude finally finding somewhere to go. Months later, Helena recovered enough to return home. Medical expenses still overwhelmed them, but hope had returned. Inspired by Mireia's determination, I began volunteering weekends at a rehabilitation center where children learned to walk using prosthetic limbs. Watching frightened children take their first confident steps changed me forever. I saw courage every weekend. I saw resilience every weekend. I saw miracles disguised as tiny victories. One afternoon, the rehabilitation director mentioned that funding cuts threatened several children's prosthetic programs. Without fully thinking it through, I organized a community fundraiser. At first, attendance looked disappointing. Then something incredible happened. Families I had helped over the years arrived. Co-workers came. Neighbors came. The bookstore owner donated rare editions for auction. Teachers organized performances. Local musicians volunteered. Even hospital nurses attended. By sunset, the fundraiser had exceeded every expectation. Enough money had been raised to provide prosthetic care for dozens of children. As applause filled the community center, I looked toward the front row. Mireya sat beside Helena, both crying quietly. Not from sadness. From hope. Because for the first time, they realized kindness spreads far beyond one conversation. It multiplies. It inspires strangers. It creates families where none existed before. The following spring, something happened that I never imagined possible. I officially became Mireya's legal guardian after Helena's health unexpectedly worsened, and she asked me to promise that her daughter would never face the world alone if anything happened to her. Keeping that promise became the greatest honor of my life. Helena passed away peacefully several months later. Her final smile carried peace because she knew her daughter had someone who truly cared. Life didn't suddenly become easy. Grief still visited us. Birthdays still hurt. Certain songs still brought tears. But now we faced those moments together. Years have passed since that afternoon at the train station. The paper flower Mireya gave me remains framed above our fireplace. Its edges have faded slightly. Its folds aren't perfect. But neither is life. Mireya eventually graduated at the top of her class before earning a scholarship to study physical therapy. She wanted children with disabilities to meet someone who truly understood their fears. Today, she helps hundreds of young patients believe in themselves. Every child she encourages carries a tiny piece of Helena's strength. A tiny piece of my healing. And a reminder that compassion always travels farther than we expect. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to Single Dad's Story. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world love, hope, and kindness still exist. Special request: before this story ends, please comment below with one simple sentence: kindness changes lives. We'd love to know you're part of this community of hope. People often ask me what changed my life. They expect some complicated answer. A promotion. Winning money. Meeting someone famous. Instead, I simply smile. Because the greatest turning point of my life arrived on an ordinary afternoon beneath the bright sunshine, inside a crowded train station, when everyone else looked away from a brave young girl with one leg. She asked one quiet question. I answered with one simple word. Yes. And that single act of kindness became the beginning of two completely different lives finding one shared future. Sometimes, the smallest seat beside you becomes the biggest place in your heart.